Hello and welcome to the Conversations with Cacao podcast. Today, I am honored to be joined by Alexa Iya Soro, a holistic transpersonal psychotherapist, a psychedelic guide, and ritual facilitator. Alexa's work bridges worlds, guiding people back to their vital essence through an eclectic practice rooted in transpersonal, humanist, animist, and depth psychology. Her approach is deeply personal, weaving direct experience, the neurobiology of growth, and cross-cultural healing traditions into transformative journeys. Informed by teachings from Kugyam Trungpa, Rinpoche, Nana Marina of the Tsutahil traditions, Martin Prechtel, and Yoruba wisdom through Daniel Four, Alexa carries a rich lineage of knowledge, honoring the sacred fire, holy waters, and her ancestral allies. Alongside her husband Luke, she co-leads Sacred Counsel LLC in Mexico, curating retreats and offering integration support at the intersection of functional medicine, ritual arts, and deep healing. Enjoy this conversation with Alexa Iya Soro. Welcome back to the Conversations with Cacao podcast. Today I am joined by Alexa Iya Soro from Sacred Counsel. We are so honored to have her here. And before we dive into our conversation, we're just going to allow ourselves to create space in our minds, creating space in our bodies, creating space in our heart. Starting by creating space in our breath, allowing ourselves to take a deep breath in, filling our whole body up all the way down into the hips, exhaling, and exhaling for as long as we can until we're completely empty. And from that point, taking a deep breath in and feeling the expansion, feeling the nourishment that the breath provides as we then begin to exhale out. This process of once again emptying, empty, until you can't empty anymore, and taking that nice nourishing breath in. And feeling how with each breath there's more space. With each breath there's more energy, more consciousness flowing into you. And allowing yourself to now find your own breath pattern. If the exhale feels really good for you, allowing yourself to curate your own breath with intention. Feeling the softening of the spine, the softening of the shoulders, the hips, the throat, the mind, as we allow our mind to settle. And maybe envisioning in our mind, that there is this beautiful river stone that begins to flow from our mind, past our eyes, past our throat, and settles within our heart, dropping and anchoring our awareness to the center point in our heart, so that our listening begins from the heart space. That as we begin to perceive and receive, it's filtering through the space of oneness in our heart. And from our heart, breathing down, connecting in to the heart of Mama Earth, feeling the energy, this liquid love that lives underneath our feet, this energy that we can tap into at any point, and just opening our field, opening our feet, opening our energy up to receiving the wisdom, the guidance, and the love of Mother Earth as her energy begins to flow into our feet, flowing into our legs, our knees, our upper thighs, our hips, saturating and nourishing our root, our our sacral, breathing up into our solar plexus and overflowing into our heart as we begin to recondition our body for support, reconditioning our body to feel held, reconditioning our body and our energy for interconnection, and reconditioning our body and our energy and our mind for deep restoration. And from our heart space, once again, rooting up towards the heart of the sky, elongating our spine, finding our shoulders rolling back, our chin raising as we bring our awareness to the heart of the sky, the heart of the cosmos, the heart of the sun, the moon, the stars, the planetary wisdom, feeling connected to the expanded vision, the expanded energy all around us, and allowing space for the information that can really bring benefit to your life to begin to flow in. Even just imagining it as light from the sun, as light from the stars, the moon, as whispers from the winds, maybe raindrops from the clouds, and allowing all of this information and wisdom to fill you with grace, with ease, with delight, with openness, and feeling this energy flowing through your crown into your brain, activating the light-sensitive parts of your brain, flowing into your pineal gland, your pituitary, and your thalamus, activating the prefrontal cortex and allowing all of these parts of our brains to begin to relax. Flowing this energy into our eyes, into our ears, and clearing the spaces that maybe we keep ourselves from hearing deeply, from deep listening, from seeing what is truly there, and bringing this energy down into our jaw, into our mouth, into our teeth, our tongue, our lips, our throat, that this light and energy begins to clear away the words that no longer serve, the stories that no longer benefit us, allowing us to really begin to connect with the words that find resonance with our soul, beginning to tell and share the stories and the poetry that illuminate the life force within us, that enable us to light our own fire and shine it brighter, bringing and flowing this energy into our shoulders, down our arms, activating our hands of light, flowing and illuminating the spine, flowing down into our hearts, our solar plexus, our sacral, our root, hips, and all the way down through our legs. And just in this moment in time, feeling the energy of you. Feeling the presence of you connected to this moment. Allowing your awareness to open even more with love and gratitude to the listeners that are present, to our beautiful guest that is here with us today, Alexa, and just beaming love and gratitude to all of our listeners and our guest. And allowing that love to come right back to you too. And then beaming the love and gratitude to our previous listeners. And allowing yourself to receive the love from the previous listeners. And beaming your love to all of the future listeners as well. And feeling through time and space that energy coming right back to you. As we see ourselves connected in this web, connected in this beautiful, growing, thriving system, where we see that we're all one, that we're all connected in this moment, and that we may receive what we really need to our highest good always, in a way that delights our minds, bodies, and spirits. And from this space, we open the door to Mama Cacao to join us today, opening the door to this beautiful spirit that is here to play, to share the wisdom as we open ourselves up as channels. Channels for ourselves and channels for this beautiful plant medicine. And opening the space for the blessing of Mama Cacao. And very gently bringing our cups to our hands. Feeling the warmth within our cup. And I am feeling called, Alexa, if you would love to share what's moving through you. Yeah.
The simple opportunity to receive a medicine that travels from so far, from all over the world with many different stories, many different ways. From a single seed to a tree to pods to fermenting and drying in sunlight and being ground down and then put into new form and then mixed and stirred. And then finally in your cup. Just like our life, we go through many different forms, and yet we somehow arrive to our true nature, which is malleable, flexible, changing. So as you gaze down at your medicine, allow yourself to take another deep breath into the body. And as you exhale, offering reciprocity to the plants, to the tree kingdom, taking a moment just to hear the layers of sound of the world around you. Our voices coming in through the earphones or over the audio in your car, wherever you are. Connected by a willingness to open the heart again. A willingness to listen more deeply. So my prayer is for each and every one of us that we continue to grow into harmonious stewards of the earth, better brothers, better sisters, better friends, mothers, caretakers, neighbors. May we honor our humanity. Thank you for this opportunity to be alive. And thank you for this opportunity, Alexandra, for us to share. And thank you for the opportunity for those listening to let me share the way that I walk with this medicine. Permission to take anything you need and leave all the rest. Your path is uniquely yours. Taking a deep breath in, exhaling out. And then whenever you feel ready, you can take your first sip of the medicine. Allowing yourself to feel its texture, its fullness. Feel free to receive and drink freely as is right for your body, your kind. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Receiving the blessings that are flowing around us at this time. Thank you for the poetry that you spoke into this space. Once again, I am joined by Alexa Iya Soro from Sacred Counsel. And this is, if you would like to introduce yourself, share a little bit about your journey, what Sacred Counsel is, and how you came to work with cacao.
Oh, what a beautiful, big question. Well, I guess I'll share where I'm at today. Today I'm in the highlands of Mexico, and my current service that I've been kind of weaving in and out of this concept of sacred counsel, right? Most people, when they hear the word council, they think of a circular council spelt COUNCIL, like a council of elders. What I'm proposing is the counseling. And so a lot of my journey has been, how do we find the intersection of psychological health and spiritual well-being, and how do they emerge into each other? Where does psychological health end and spiritual practice begin? Can you have a high power in spirituality and a low development in psychology? Can you be really well developed in psychology and not really have a connection? So my life has kind of been this exploration, and I think that's what I'm most grateful for, is I've really allowed myself to just explore, and that's actually my Nawal. In the Mayan tradition, there's like these different kind of horoscope signs, and I'm 12 which is a road, and 12 is all about life experiences on the path. And so I'm just always acquiring more life experiences. So I guess you could say that as a psychologist and a therapist, I'm extremely eclectic. That's what they use. But I'm here in Mexico, and I'm the on-site therapist for a variety of plant medicine retreats at a beautiful space called the Espacio Kunji. And I just want to give a shout out to Espacio Kunji. It's a gift from a man named Leonidas to his two lineages of teachers that he loves. It's his Tibetan Buddhist lineage and his Shipibo elders. And he built this beautiful space as an offering for his teachers to come and share. And somehow we have been welcomed into sharing the medicine of ayahuasca and bufo in this space at retreat. And so you can consider me like kind of like the mama at retreat. My husband Luke is a musician, and then we bring in a variety of friends that are Indigenous, friends that are training with the Indigenous to serve the medicine in a really healthy way that considers all aspects of understanding functional nutrition, understanding the health of the nervous system, understanding someone's propensity towards certain wiring in the brain and in the body, and then also people's spiritual beliefs. I would say my favorite thing that I'm teaching on right now in the world of plant medicine is cosmological literacy, understanding when we go into a ritual space and we look at the person that's holding the altar, understanding they will have a different kind of orientation towards their cosmos, towards interpreting, whether a plant is an actual entity that we're communicating with, like a consciousness, like cacao could be a goddess consciousness, or someone that's a little more therapeutic might be, exploring it as a series of chemicals that elicit and activate some type of archetype inside of the person. And so my life is like this kind of funny bridge maker between both kind of Western world folks and folks that are Indigenous, and how to carry this in a good way and how to trade resources. I was talking with a dear teacher who is Kamkak, and this is the Indigenous people of the Sonoran Desert, and they carry the medicine of bufo. And she's amazing, amazing elder. But we were just talking about acknowledging like their resource is a lot of connection to intact tradition, spirituality, and they have a very like strict rules around lineage and who serves the medicine. And then I'm bringing in folks from all over the world that could, afford a first class ticket to fly to Mexico. And we were talking about how do we create systems where we can have more intersection and support one another. So that's what I'm exploring right now in my life. How cacao got me there? Oh my goodness. Um, my love of chocolate, I would say, started since a child. Many people always talk about drinking that first sip of medicinal cacao. It reminds them of childhood, right? So, of course, childhood, snow days, stuff like that. But when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I think in 2013, I fell in love with, well, one, very expensive health food stores, and then also very expensive chocolate bars. And I was like, I could make these myself. So I started making these little like hexagonal chocolates with goji berries in there. And I would share them at yoga teacher training, and I would share them wherever I went. I was just always fueled on this kind of like chocolate that I would make myself, and never knew what a cacao ceremony was actually, but taught a lot of yoga. I was holding a lot of women's circles, and I was actually really into ritual arts. I was really into, I have a beautiful community of friends that run a gathering called Forest Dance, and it happens twice a year, more recently once a year in Western Mass. Really lovely community. Love you, Jason, if you're listening. And Devoted to what it's like to work with the fire all night long, sober circle, drum circle, working through trance, working with community, different roles. Essentially, I had been approached by a friend who runs something called the Reliquarium, which is they're now pretty well known for making beautiful stages at Envision Festival, and but this was way early on, and they used to do like kind of scandalous kind of warehouse psytrance parties essentially. And my good friend Ivy was like, Alexa, can you do a cacao ceremony to open our event? And I was like, I don't really know what that is. And she's like, you work with cacao, right? And I was like, well, I make chocolates. And so I was very careful at this time to not kind of like step past my capacities at that time. So I was also studying to be a psychotherapist. And within that realm, there's a lot of awareness around not overextending our capacities or presenting like we're something we aren't. And so I told Ivy, I was like, well, I can make these chocolates. I can facilitate a connective circle. I can teach some somatic practices, and then we'll eat the chocolate mindfully. I don't know if anyone's ever been in like a meditation retreat where they have one grape and they say, I want you to eat this grape for 30 minutes. So we just try to engage the sense of taste. And when we are engaging the sense of taste, it actually stimulates the vagus nerve, which calms the central nervous system. And so essentially, I just did like a little small group opening and encouraged people that if the night continued and they didn't really know anyone and they needed a friend, they had this circle. And that's been the message that I've carried ever since with cacao, which is community, connection, and co regulation. And then essentially from there, that night opened up, and I just remember feeling like the chocolate that I usually would make every day just felt so strong. I was like, wow, I felt electric, which made me feel like, wow, I like to explore whatever this is, kind of facilitating this kind of process. Didn't really touch it for a little bit of time. And there's a love story in here. I'm warning everybody. So I was just continuing my own life, and I randomly get this request from someone named DeStefano, my husband, requesting to call me because he was thinking about moving back to Rhode Island, was living at an ayahuasca retreat center in Costa Rica, wanted to come home to be with his mama, take care of her, but was kind of unsure about the community there. And I guess we had had many, many similar friends because of forest dance, this kind of close knit Western Mass community, but had never met. And I was like, sure, I'll chat with you. And so we chatted, and I told him like Rhode Island is lovely, but it's really hard to get people together. There's a joke around Rhode Island, if anything is more than 15 minutes away, people won't really drive there. So, anyways, I shared that with him. We decided to meet up. Our original intention was to just do some ceremony work together. I was going to support him facilitating kambo, which is an Amazonian tree frog medicine. It's a purgative, non-psychedelic medicine, and unregulated in the United States, actually. It's essentially peptide therapy. I don't know, one thing led after the other. We met up, we started talking about doing just ceremonies together and working together, and we quickly fell in love. And then Luke encouraged me to do my training with Mbu, formerly known as Heartblood, because of his dear friends, Moses and Amba. Luke is the godfather of their son, Aya, who is now actually doing a lot of the manufacturing, a lot of the factory work at Mbu, doing a really great job right now. It's a young man. I'm really proud of him. He's kind of like dropping into Papa's shoes. And so I ended up doing the training with Mo. And I really appreciated Moses's approach, which was in line with my kind of way of orienting to the world, which is self-insight through practice, utilizing whatever the prompt is, whether it's mala japa, whether it's Sufi whirling, whether it's cacao, whether it's ayahuasca, not getting caught up in the external expression of the thing, but what it elicits inside of me, and then how to find my authentic truth relating to that. And so I did the training with Moses and kind of continued on the path and continued doing ceremonies with Luke on weekends, on Sundays. Every Sunday, we'd have a group of people come together. We'd sit with combo and have a potluck. People would call it frog church. And it actually brought a really beautiful group of people together because I find that most people just want to gather and to be together. And anytime we can share medicine and then share food after, that is much closer to our Indigenous brothers and sisters than we can think. It's going through the work and then sharing the food, going through the hard work of planting the seeds and then sharing the harvest. And so there's something really beautiful and sweet around that. And I think I'll pause there because the story goes on. But that's kind of how I got into I didn't necessarily choose it. I feel like it kind of chose me, and the same with my deeper studies with cacao. I was living in Tepoztlán a few years ago, and I knew I needed to have some time for myself. So I started looking up retreats around yoga in Guatemala, applied for this retreat, arrived to this retreat. I thought it was just a retreat about cacao. And this is how she works with me in particular. This energy is like, it just we works in this realm, like introduces me to people, connects us. It's like very much the middle world work, which is beautiful. And so I show up at this retreat, and it actually ends up being Wayeb with the Cruz family in San Pedro La Laguna, which is a very now well known, but like a very, very, very important time of year for the Tutuhil and the Mayan tradition. And it's not like a light, peppy cacao retreat, it's prayer. And it cycles around the calendar, and it honors the shifting of time, and it honors the fact that we are little humans and we have to tend to fire and we have to pray and we have to work for our ability to continue on earth through our praise and through our beauty making. That is what I love about some of the tradition of Maya, mainly taught to me more directly through Martin Pretschel, all of his readings and his writings. I love the way he teaches, but this understanding of like humans are here to create music and beauty and praise things. We're so different than every other animal. It's
Yeah.
unreal. So essentially, cacao has surprised me over and over again around just bringing me on a lot of adventures and introducing me to a lot of lovely people. And I believe, like, Ish Cacao, the goddess giving birth to duality, this kind of like we are a body and we're also a spirit. And how do we make space for both? So that's a little bit about that.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I feel like I went on this epic journey with you,
Yeah.
guiding us along with your energy of 12. I'm gonna tune in for me because there's so much that came up. So really what stands out to me at this moment is like the weaver. And I always come back to cacao as really this powerful weaver, weaving hearts together, opening the doors to meet people. And there are so many times that it's just, in the right place at the right time, or at the end of ceremony, connecting with someone really pivotal and finding yourself in places. And it's just like, oh, wow, you can feel the energy of cacao bringing people together. And I love that she works in that way. I commend you for your wanting to take it upon you to make your own chocolate and that self initiative. But yeah, it's definitely such a beautiful process connecting with the plant in that way. And I had a similar experience when I used to live in Berlin. I always loved chocolate, and I always loved like 99%. I would get like the Lindt 99% when I was a teenager. I was like, the darker the better. And I would just sit with it, and it's so good. And then I found when I was living in Berlin, it was 100% raw cacao. I'd never seen that before. And from this brand called Love Chalk, really expensive for that time. It was like €4 for like this tiny little bar, and it was filled with like sometimes mulberries or cayenne, and it's just delicious. So I would buy them, and then I would just sit and like set my intention before I ever knew about cacao ceremony, and just like take a nibble and like let it melt in my mouth and have it be a really somatic experience. But it was like such a special connection. And in their artwork, it's really, really beautiful. And they say food of the gods there. And this is, before I had my first ceremonial sip. So it's just interesting to see the ways that she weaves into our own lives and experience before we actually have the honor of sharing the medicine with people.
The natural intuition to savor a piece of chocolate is so human. And I love that this medicine it's very forgiving. There's not necessarily like, working with ayahuasca training for years, there are sometimes like energies you need to clear and work through, and there's a lot going on in the body and the system, and cacao is just like swaddling. And the Mayans, cacao, ka is force, is just connecting with your own power, connecting with your own power. And I really delight in the fact that there's many different opinions around the world around folks like adapting cacao as ceremony. Some people saying there's no such thing as a cacao ceremony. It's only used with the midwives. And then there's some people saying, yes, there was because we blah, blah, so many different stories, right? The story that I like to share and just put to the center is I love that there is a plant that has enough in effect for us Westerners to feel our heart open, and also is forgiving enough that we get to explore facilitating a little bit of ritual with one another. Like I remember, I don't know, early on, or sometimes some people are like, let's drink cacao and pull tarot cards and play with our intuition. That is a simple way of connecting with one another in a brainwave state that is a little bit closer to what our ancestors would explore. Just allowing our heart to speak and to be intuitive, to step out of the rules and the regulations of that. So I do really appreciate that because it's helping a lot of people lean into, okay, like there's cacao ceremonies. Can we have a tea ceremony? That's an exciting new thing too. So more people are just deciding to sit down together more consciously, no matter what the imbibing material, or people are coming together now and doing breath work, breathing. There's nothing more simple than coming together and breathing with other humans. So I feel like we're on this crest of this wave of just like reigniting this beautiful awe for the simplicity of life and being alive. And yeah, that was my little rant, just envisioning you biting that little bit of chocolate and like, yes, for a very not logical, practical way. You're like, this is expensive. I'm going to enjoy this, right? There's a quote, I think it's by Angeles Arian, and she talks about walking the spiritual path with practical feet. And I love that. I love this kind of like practical support of one another, practical sharing of medicine that is generally very forgiving, very supportive, very low contraindications. And so I just that's kind of like what wanted to come out of me because of that
Yes.
vision of you.
I really enjoy that. And I'm going to sit with that quote and really allow myself, my spirit to embody that because I feel like the simplicity and the power in those words activate and catalyze so much presence into our actions. Yeah. And the space of coming together and like you said, it's like there's nothing more simple in coming together and breathing together. And in the same sense, there's nothing more challenging too, of sitting together and breathing and facing what comes up when you're breathing and then being seen and allowing yourself to be seen and held by what comes up and just surrendering to trust and community and surrendering to just your own breath, your own body, what's moving through. And really, really powerful, that space that we can create in between, right? The intersection of all of our consciousness of coming together as co-creators, as weavers of light and play and beauty. Very, very inspiring.
Yeah, we're all necessary. We all hold the circle. At least in the ceremonies that I like to facilitate, it's like we are co-creating this. I do really love sometimes when there's like an amazing musician and then they serve some cacao and everybody gets to listen to them. That's beautiful. But what really kind of gets me going and excited is if we like have some type of ritual form with the medicine, but then also see what arises. And like sometimes someone's like, "Can I offer a song?" And then all of a sudden, this person that I never even knew had this voice, they just come out. And then this other person's deciding to like dance this prayer for their, and just creating enough like framework, but enough space that people can come into their gifts and share together. So,
That is so beautiful. That's amazing. Just seeing the space, yeah, creating the space, right, for us to begin to hear ourselves and practice the spirit, practice the act of the spirit. And I want to come back to you said three words in the beginning when you said it was community, connection, and
co-regulation.
regulation. And if you could elaborate on that a little bit and dive into what that looks like.
I mean, we as human animals are naturally wired with mirror neurons, which are these kinds of like things that fire in the brain that help us feel what other people feel. And just for listeners that might not know, it's like watching someone get a touchdown, you get like excited with them. Or like, watching the funny videos where someone's slipping and you're like, oh, that ability to empathize is the mirror neuron. So we have this like deeply wise, intact system. But life and the recent years, it seems, have made human presence a little bit more dysregulating than regulating. And just because of certain layers of beliefs around politics and also COVID and just like all of these things, it's like the sight of someone may not elicit that anymore. And for me, I see cacao as coming forward as a medicine that can release dopamine and anandamide and serotonin and oxytocin as a medicine to help us remember that we are wired to co-regulate. So for me, co-regulation is, especially as a psychotherapist, and I really, I don't know if anyone's ever walked into a room where there's just someone that seems very loving or sat with a meditation teacher and you're like, whoa, you got it going on. And that's because they're connected to themselves and we're regulating to the drum of their spirit. And so they are the loudest drum in the room. And so if we can learn how to maintain the rhythm together, we can beat to the same drum. And there is one drum on earth, which is the earth, and we can attune to that. That's why in a lot of temescals or sweat lodges, they only bring only one drum, because we all have that one beating heart. You pass that drum around, but we're beating together. Sometimes it is a free for all and it's a lot of fun, but I have noticed that when some water pourers and temescaleras, they bring one drum and they'll say that, but just as a metaphor, just as a feeling to remember, like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, to co-regulate is really powerful. And I think that this idea that we can help shift someone by our presence and our connection with ourselves, I think for me, really makes sure, like it encourages me to really make sure I'm in a good way. When I hold space, when I'm with my friends, I'm a psychotherapist regularly, like I have to, if people are co-regulating to me, I better like keep it relatively like aligned and clear and compassionate. And when I'm not doing so great, just do no harm. That's it. Just be present, loving awareness. Present, loving awareness. We're bringing in Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin, the power of
Yeah.
just listening, right? Present, loving awareness. And to understand that too, to also be aware of ourselves and to understand when it is the right action, the time to do something, or the right action to just sit and watch and listen. And my husband shared something with me very early on when we were doing early ceremony work. And he's like, if you don't know what to do in ceremony, do nothing at all. If you don't know what to, and in life, if you don't know what to do, just do nothing. Practice doing nothing, and then it will become clear when you need to do something, and then you do it. And that kind of resonated with me around just, yeah, just really listening to what's truly necessary and helpful too. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah. It
Yeah.
definitely did. And thank you for bringing that clarity in the form of the words that you offered, because that is something I go back to a lot, especially around teachers and why people come to Circle. And that's something that I speak about a lot too, is like you're coming for a specific teacher because I say it as like they're a tuning fork, and we're all, if there's a tuning fork that's ringing, it's going to actually start vibrating the tuning fork next to it. So as we're emitting from our electromagnetic field around our heart, our vibration begins to affect the coherence of that around us, and we're going to align to the most coherent field. So the power and why we come, or why I go to certain teachers, is because their field is so coherent that being in their energy, it enables my field to cohere and enables me to become that clear channel. And when I'm doing the work to allow myself to be that clear channel, now my transmissions, my connection, my ceremonies and circles are like zing, and we leave and we begin to emanate and radiate that frequency, that of source. Well, for whatever words that you want to use for that. But what came up in Circle is like, what is the vibration of your own energy here? And what is keeping you from emanating that? And what do we actually have to face, love, embrace, hold, bring more compassion to, in order to cohere ourselves to our natural state of being? And really powerful. And I love now bringing co-regulation and that layer
Mm.
into my experience and into my vocabulary. And I appreciate that lensing.
Yeah. Yeah. When two things are in harmony, that's when we know it feels good. And usually harmony feels really easy. Like when two notes are actually in harmony, you can feel the ease pass between the sound waves. And I think that's what you're speaking about when there's a teacher like, yep, no need to intellectualize, just to be with that and to feel that. But sometimes the note changes. Maybe my note changes. Maybe my teacher's note changes. We don't need to intellectualize it, but maybe it's time to explore somewhere else and to find that new kind of like harmony. And then sometimes we go back. I tend to cycle around a lot of a lot of like maybe three different things in my life around what really gets me excited and I mean, I kind of go in seasons, and I go in seasons with some of my teachers too. And yeah.
Yeah, that's that is interesting, because the things that we think about also tune us to specific expressions of self and allow the lensing of that, right? There's the window inside of us, and it's like, well, what do I want to let out now? And going back to kind of like the tuning metaphor too, in the sense of seeing it as playing an instrument. Like when you start your day, you're cohering yourself to, like, I want to make sure that I'm playing in tune out into the world. And I like love the instrument metaphor because it's so easy. Like I would never play, I'm a cellist, so I would never play my cello if it's out of tune. I would stop and be like, wait, something sounds off. Let me tend to this before I continue to play. And it's the same kind of with our emotions as well, where it's like, all right, this does not sound like a loving symphony that's emanating from me. And I had a little bit of a perspective shift the other way, where I feel like, oh man, I should have had this realization earlier. But, all in good time,
See?
human development and learning. And especially stepping out of facilitating this compassion circle that I held the other day, is really, I'm working with deep unconditional love again, cycling back to that aspect of unconditional loving self and the world. And there was a conflict that arose within me, and it was in relationship as well. But seeing that my predisposition is towards, okay, well, what would be loving towards them? Like, how can I orient myself to create a loving action, to create harmony, to give love to that person? And sometimes it doesn't feel good or right. I'm like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not there. And the epiphany was the other day, wait, what is most loving towards myself? And what can I do to love myself in this moment? And then realizing, oh, wow, that creates the natural state for me to want to give love to that person. And I was like, it only took me of 3 decades to figure this out, but
But you
still
feel it.
allowing that.
Are you
I
feeling
do,
it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the
totally.
best lessons.
Yeah.
That is the best lesson. We can put ourselves on fire if we force our spiritual growth too much. Have you heard of the
Yeah.
concept putting yourself on fire?
I haven't actually, no. It sounds intense.
It's in Buddhism, and it's this concept of, I was talking about spiritual development being vertical and horizontal development being interpersonal or personality. There's some
Mm.
people that develop like really powerful skills from meditation. Anybody that's meditated for a while has noticed like when we can sit still, we can tune and we can like feel some powers. And it's people that have really high spiritual power but aren't connected in their humanity. And so some of us, when we've like kind of like force ourselves to like kind of like move forward in a way that actually isn't sustainable for our humanity, then we slingshot back. And so it's so important to just let our path kind of unfold as it needs to, as it as is human. It's really nice to have our eyes on a goal, but if we are skipping steps, this idea around spiritual bypassing, then it's going to be more harmful in the future. Yeah.
When you spoke in the beginning, introducing yourself, you did speak about the aspect of the spiritual growth
Mhm.
and the psychological growth and how there might be a chasm, and illuminating that step of like grow as much as you are human. And I like to relate that to like a video game.
Mhm.
Because sometimes I like playing in the metaphors where it's like a video game, and sometimes you have to do all the steps in that level before you can unlock the next level. And I see it in my life of like sometimes I just need to turn the dining room table this way, then that way, and then move it in the next room, and then realize, oh wow, this unlocked the next level of life experience, and I only needed to do move these physical things around, but in that order to unlock that. And I like to reflect and laugh about. It seems like you could have just gone from A to B or had that outcome, but I actually needed to walk through all these steps in order to get to that space where I can now receive a new layer of understanding. And if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about like the psychological and spiritual chasm, because I think I'm definitely more in the spiritual one, and the human one it's like there's work.
What you just described though reminds me of this concept that I share a lot with folks when I'm supporting them in making big decisions or after going on retreat because they have this life before retreat and life after retreat. And it's this concept that comes from Jungian analysis and it's called the transcendent function. And it's essentially the more that we can hold these opposing sides, like kitchen table over there, or I need to leave this relationship or stay in this relationship, the more we can actually hold the totality of those two, it creates friction. And anytime we create friction, something manifests. That's when two cells rub together, they create matter. And that third thing is the transcendent function. And that's why it's really fun also in relationships with our teachers. Like when the longer we can hold this friction, like Ram Dass says, he's like, stick with the teacher as long as you absolutely can. Their personality hangups, as long as they're not doing direct harm on you or anyone that you know, is the friction. Stick with that because something else will evolve and emit out of it. But a lot of I'll go back to your question around this is something that the words were put to it by a teacher named John Wellwood, who is a student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And I went to Naropa just for 1 year, actually, but fell deeply in love with kind of the path and the way that Chogyam teaches so well in English and kind of the first generation of students from Buddhism in the United States. And so John Wellwood is one of those teachers. He is deceased. His wife, Jennifer, is still alive. And there's a book, it's called Towards the Psychology of Awakening. And he is the one that is talking about being a psychotherapist and also being something that practices meditation. That's literally like psychological development can only get us so far. And sometimes there is a leap of faith that is necessary in our lives. Letting go of the obsession with our little neuroses, like trying not to figure it all out in a session, trying not to figure out whether we should stay in this relationship or stay in this job and leave it, and just offering it up. In the act of offering it up, like I have some dear friends that are Sufi or Islamic, and there's such what I really admire about these friends is like anything that happens or like Allah has a greater plan. Like I am offering it up. And to live life in that way is a really beautiful way because what it's saying is that I am trusting that the way I understand the world is limited and that my ability to self-regulate through the mystery will only grow if I choose to keep letting go. And this practice of letting go are the spiritual traditions or practices is whether you're doing transcendental meditation, you're trying to let go of thoughts between each breath, or you're whirling and you're like letting go of the physical form of the body. It's so these kind of practices are helping us give pause to this desire or this need to figure it all out, which I think is like all the paths to the heart, right? And so I think it, and the way I see my role also is helping people originally release the kind of negative stories and build more stories that are new because we humans like to put stories to things. Eventually, I would love for there to be no story for people that I work with, just no story, but we are still human. So kind of replacing the negative stories with stories that have a little bit more space for a newness to come in, new self-reflection, new self-identity, new orientation to the world, new orientation to sensation in the body, and then eventually no story at all, which is a spiritual leap, I believe. But we need to do a little bit of developmental work so that when we do meet the ineffable, like sitting with DMT, 5-MeO, DMT, Bufo, there is a little bit of like ego structure for that amount of energy to come into. Some people call it the second simplification, this kind of idea of like when we're little kids, like we try to get more complex, like it, or when we're first born, it's just kind of like crying, need for the breast, being breastfed, feeling warmth, getting cold. It's like pretty simple. And then our needs start to get more complex. We start to develop our identities, our personalities, the way people think we are, like little Alexa, she's such a good little helper, all of these things that we grow up with. And then there comes a time in our life when we say, I'm ready to let it all go. That's usually when rites of passage would come in for our brothers and sisters that are still intact and in lineage and indigenous. Like there, that is the time to create the second simplification, to pare ourselves down to our core components and then rediscover who we are. And I think that is also why a lot of people are coming to plant medicines too, because they're saying like this is too complex and I feel like I do need to pare it down. But some people would call that destructive. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like I want to just leave my life? And it's not necessarily that we want to leave our life, it's that we want to leave the sensation of I'm already too full. Everything's been decided for me. And I still don't even know who I really am because my whole identity is built off of things that have been reflected to me, which is essential for children. You're really good at this. You're so good at that. To build up the ego and the personality is so important. But it's also important to remember that humans all over the world for endless times have developed some type of technique to sever that identity and to say, it's time for you to discover who you really are. And I know I got like super intense, but that's like my
Love
passion.
it.
And that's why I love
Yeah.
doing what I do. And that's also what I try to help people understand when they're coming to plant medicines. We're not just coming to get enlightened. We're not there yet. A lot of us are just not there yet. We're coming to get rid of the stuff. And I share like these medicines don't give us anything that we don't have, cacao included. They help us get rid of the shit, excuse my language, because it's gunk. It's not nice stuff that is not us. It helps us get rid of what is not truly us so we can remember who we are. And so for me, that's kind of like where I intersect with the helping people kind of like make enough peace with their personality and also identifying where their hangups are, where their sensitivities are, so they can take care of themselves in certain ways, and also what their strengths are. Like helping someone just understand, oh, this is how my personality is created. Oh, this is what gets me excited. Or, oh, I kind of lean towards when I'm stressed out, I get more depressed versus when I get stressed out, I get more activated because there's different people that do different things to regulate their nervous system under the influence of stress. And so just understanding that too, if someone's going to work with a medicine or to do a spiritual practice, if they're stressing the system, they may start to feel a sensation that they call as depression. But it is also really important to acknowledge that that sensation is just something arising. We don't necessarily need to label it, but how do we support it? How do we bring it back into harmony? And then sometimes the spiritual practices are done for that, watching the emotions rise and fall. I really love working with mala japa, which is like these beads on a necklace. And traditions all over the world work with beads on a necklace. We have, the rosary folks, people that have their prayer beads in Greek Orthodox times, the yogis with the mala japa. And I love this single pointedness, and what it is, this isn't a mala, but if you're passing bead to bead to bead on the mala, in a very neurobiological sense, you're focusing your attention, you're using your prefrontal cortex to focus attention on a sensation. Anytime you use your prefrontal cortex to focus attention on a sensation, you activate somewhere called the insula. And the insula is also responsible for self-compassion and emotional literacy. So if we're feeling stressed out and we decide to do mala japa, and we say, I'm going to focus on my bead, I'm going to say complicated words, whether they're, Sanskrit words. I like more complicated because then you can really tell if you're not paying attention. You're focusing on sensory perception, you're breathing in and then breathing out, usually a really long phrase. So you're having a longer exhale and you get to watch your emotions go like all these different ways. And then eventually, with some practice too, we get to see ourselves come back into homeostasis. I've been through times in my life where it will take me like 5 rounds of the mala, and I really need to do that, and that's really, really hard. And then there's some days when it's just really easy, and that's why it's called the practice. Some days I look down and I'm like almost done with the mala, and some days I look down, I'm like 10 in, and I'm just like, I have 100 and something to go. Okay, here we are. And that and also, the spiritual development is also a practice. I don't necessarily think it's like a ladder that we need to climb. Some people do.
There's so much beauty in what you spoke and all the things that you're talking about. I'm like, I love all of that. I'm super fascinated by all the aspects that you brought to light. I'm just going to tune in to me to make sure that
Sure.
I'm feeling into what needs to come through and what's authentically guiding this forward. I think that, okay, so there's an aspect of the story, and that's something that I've worked through a lot in the practices that I've done and the ceremonies and circles I've been in. But I think for some listeners that maybe are newer to this concept, don't know really how to relate to that. So I would like to just explore that a little more of what we mean by when we talk about the story and how that can be so comfortable for our identity and ego. And if you wish to illuminate that a little bit more, I think it would be beneficial for the understanding.
Sure. I mean, there are psychology modalities like narrative therapy that help people kind of just work with the objective things that happen in their life, but start to look at it maybe not from this lens, but from this lens. So there's a little more space for allowing in new perspectives. But the way I like to teach the story is I do a lot of, I know, I know that my Instagram is like really beautiful and ritualistic, but I'm super neuroscience nerd. So the story is essentially what we call the default mode network. The default mode network is a series of connections in our brain that develop from the time we can remember memories in the language center. So the default mode network starts from the language center, which is story. And it's a story of who we think we are. I have a default mode network of Alexa, and you know, I have like very simple ways of responding. The default mode network is an evolutionary system that helps us save time. I use my default mode network to pick up this cup, usually the way I always do, same motor skills, same situation. Sometimes we can deactivate the default mode network through plant medicines, but we can also deactivate the default mode network through a variety of other things. Ritual theater, through bottom-up processing, feeling sensation. Instead of saying, I feel depressed, being like, well, I'm noticing tightness in my shoulders, and the tightness in my shoulders has the color of this, and it actually reminds me of this story of when I was a child and I had to do this one thing and it was just like so hard for me. And then therefore, instead of just labeling it as a story and then kind of like reinforcing I'm a person with depression, I am a person that has a story that has created a sense of heaviness in my life. How do I work with that? And so the default mode network to me is this kind of this very strong story. And neuroscience has proven that what wires together fires together. And when connections are 30 years old, they're very strong. And so sometimes it's really nice to try to shake that up. Some people come to microdosing plant medicines and to give a little pause in the default mode network. Some people go to a deeper experience in plant medicines, which is called, people refer to as the ego death. Ego death is just simply the default mode network going offline. There's still consciousness there. It's just we relate completely differently to our surrounding environment. Like if I took a microdose, I might, reach for my cup a little bit differently. If I had a lot of medicine in me, like I'm in an ayahuasca ceremony, I might try to figure out what my mug actually is. Like I know that I'm thirsty, but I might actually need help to bring that there. So we are still conscious. It just gives us an opportunity to have direct experience. Because if we're always filtering experience through the story that people tell us who we are, our life is going to remain at this shape. And we can break up our experience. Sometimes default mode network turns off and our story turns off when there's a deep loss. Like that was how my spiritual path began when my brother was diagnosed with cancer, eventually died, visited me in a dream before he died, and I went on a whole long healing journey. And my default mode network changed because my family constellation changed. I had to look at just reality. It was just so jarring for me to how to figure out how to grieve, but then also to be highly performing at a college school, like in a very, very high performance college, playing soccer, doing all these things. And it just felt like there was actually a deep schism between what I was feeling inside and the external world. And that dissonance of story made me say, which one's true? And that is a very special moment when we get to actually, that's why I think it is overall a blessing. It was really, really hard, but I was going on a really, not such a great way. But yeah, that dissonance of stories is amazing. And I think that people can also deactivate this story by traveling, looking at the world through other people's eyes, being like, wow, this is what people eat for breakfast. It could be as simple as that. Or speaking a different language, trying a different tongue is a whole different thing than when I moved to Mexico. If this is fluent, I'm like here. I can have like my friends will still make fun of me because my Spanish is very, very formal. And sometimes I just get really tired and then we switch to English. But I notice I have a different personality when I speak Spanish. It kind of annoys me sometimes because I like to be a little bit quicker and like funnier, which has been a really interesting spiritual practice because that's a story that I tell myself. It's like who we tell ourselves who we are. That is our story. And sometimes it doesn't match what our friends tell us who we are. And that's why it's really important to have good friends, good loved ones that we're willing to trust. And they're like, hey, I know you think you're this way, but you're kind of also this way. And we get the opportunity to say, hey, let's look at that. I remember there was this couples therapist. I give this tip a lot to couples that I work with. And it's the story that I tell myself when you do X, Y, or Z is this. Is that true? So it's the way we perceive, it's understanding that the way we're perceiving something might not actually be true, and we're willing to ask the person for help. So the story I tell myself, honey, when you leave the dishes by the sink, is that you think I should do them. Is that true? And my honey gets to say, actually, yes or no. And we get to actually check in and we get to share our reality. There's no way for me to feel what you're feeling ever. But I can check in with myself and then ask you if you're also feeling what I'm feeling. And then if not, how do we meet in the middle? So that's kind of what I mean when I speak about story, because they are so malleable. And those are our little stories about ourselves. And then we have the bigger stories that are like the mythologies, or, the story of Ish Cacao, or the stories of, any great tradition that when we listen to, it kind of activates a part of us. We start to feel the other person of that story. So stories are also really beautiful too, but they're tools. They're not the truth of what is. That's okay, because the truth is ever existing. Everything else is ephemeral, including these bodies. These bodies are not necessarily the truth. Consciousness is. This is my belief, right? This body will change. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that aspect and really clarifying that, because I think we get so lost in the story that we forget to recognize that we are actually telling ourselves a story. And there are lots of times where I have been working with women and clients and circles where it's like, oh, wait, I don't know, that's the story. Allow yourself to just feel like what you were saying. Allow yourself to really feel and speak from this moment, not from the past, not from the illusion or, yeah, like the story. And then there's also the part of it that is deeply healing, that the story can be deeply healing. And I love the work of Nancy Mellon, and she is a storyteller, and the power of story to heal. And that's where we talk about the mythic story, the mythic self, and the journey of enabling ourselves to begin to write a new narrative and relate to our life through that mythic archetypal aspect for healing, like you said, as a tool. So uh, both are really exciting and really fascinating. And just recognizing the parts where, yeah, okay, this is a cycle that I'm stuck within, and how do I begin to shift these aspects within myself that don't harmonize with how I want to feel. And I think you gave us so many tools in how to actually shift that and begin that. I am very curious about Sacred Counsel and the work you do within that, and for our listeners to know a little bit more about, yeah, what that is.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to take in what you shared, because I love that you
Yeah,
have to. Do
absolutely.
you put all the things that we like recommended to everybody in the notes?
I
Is there a way?
Yeah,
Great, because I
absolutely.
feel like you just shared so many, and then I wanted to share another book.
Yeah,
I'm
please
like a
do.
library. I'll be, I have a book for you. I have a book for you. I don't know what that is. I also know where everything is in my house. I have like these funny, those are my spiritual gifts. Oh, so Sacred Counsel. Sacred Counsel is essentially like our spirit baby of my husband and I. And it's just focused around living a full human life through a variety of pathways. So, through working with functional medicine, with Luke, we do a lot of work around detoxing the liver, understanding your hair tissue mineral analysis, understanding like what the body's burning in terms of minerals, psychological support through me, ritual arts, plant medicine. We do a lot of, I feel like Luke and I really, really like to support people in the plant medicine space on owning their own process and also owning their own boundaries. So essentially, Luke and I work online supporting people, but we also do like kind of like bespoke is like the term that people use, bespoke retreats. So people will contact us and they'll be like, I want to bring my son and we kind of want to like work through this thing. And like we may want to work with medicine, but we may also want to just do this like challenging adventure and move through that together. And so it's a space where people get to meet all aspects of themselves. And so it is mainly focused on online psychotherapy support and coaching. But for me, it's honoring the fact I think that we have this world of there's my brothers and sisters that are Indigenous, and then my brothers and sisters that are on kind of like the MAPS territory. And then we have this funny intersection of folks that are exploring ritual arts, theater, neuroscience, mental health counseling, nervous system work, Qigong. And so it's kind of just Luke and I really wanting to support people in the things that have helped us. That's what this is. And I share this with folks all the time. It's like, will you reach a point where it's like, you're healed enough? Go and serve.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to serve and love. So the things that I love to integrate are expressive arts therapy, working with cacao. I have had a lot of experience with death, so I do sometimes help people as a death doula, very limited. I do a lot of grief work though. Um, rites of passage, a lot of women's work. I love working one on one with women and intuition and like healing and curating spaces, especially because I'm in Mexico too. I have a lot of friends here that do a lot of rebozo work and a lot of Mayan abdominal massage. And so that's really beautiful. And Luke kind of integrates his training in Qigong and also being a musician and also functional medicine. And so we're really trying to support the body and the mind. But I think our main intention is to bring people back to the earth, like to actually just bring people wherever they are closer to the plants that are around. I think I was speaking about this before to you or maybe to myself this morning. Um, I I feel like my goal is, oh, okay, I remember who I was talking to. But anyways, my goal in this work is to, yes, plant medicine is like the bigger master teacher plants are amazing portals and catalysts for like being like, wow, something outside of me that is connected to the earth can help me. And they are kind of a little bit louder teachers, but for me it's like, okay, but what about the companion plants in your home? What about the local herbs? What about the mushrooms that grow in your forest? So whatever I can do to, and this is my selfish desire to, I want to help people find ways to alleviate their own suffering. Number one, I want them to learn ways to help others to alleviate their suffering because everybody loves purpose. Everybody loves to be able to help. And I want to help people get curious on how they can make their own medicine. My biggest passion right now is supporting folks. I do carry the medicine of mushrooms and to help people since they grow all over the world. And we also used to run a mushroom farm in Rhode Island, culinary mushrooms. But so
Oh,
I've
wow.
had like the blessing of like cultivating many, 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 way too many mushrooms. But this idea of this medicine that is woven through the soil, that is connected all amongst the world, still has intact lineages in Mexico in the Mazatec tradition, but also has lineages of, there's a few amazing books. Secret Drugs of Buddhism is one. Another book is called The Psychedelic Gospels, which is another which explores the use of psychedelics in early Christianity and Soma and Amanita Muscaria. So we have this kind of interesting teacher. So we have plants, we have the plant kingdom in the evolutionary ladder, and then we have fungus in the evolutionary ladder, and then we have us. So the fungus and us are a little bit closer than the plants and us. And I have noticed that the teachings and the assimilation of the medicine is, this is just my cosmology, but it feels a little bit easier to me whether I am just taking reishi versus plants. They speak kind of a different language. And so I love working with people and just developing, even with cacao too, like developing your own altar, developing the ability to hold your own ceremony, get your own relationship to the elements. We're made of all the elements, whether you have spiritual beliefs or not. If you've sat in front of a fire and like worked with it, you know that it's like you learn some things from it. If you're in the water and it's really strong, like you feel the power of the water, right? If we don't have air, we're like, I really need air, right? And then earth is like feeling the earth. And so for me, Sacred Counsel also is making these more esoteric traditions more applicable, more accessible, while still honoring tradition, but also honoring the fact we are in this space of this time as humanity where we do need to work with one another and develop more communication. I don't know how I ended up, in Mexico working in these traditions, being a connective person, but I'm here and so I'm just seeing where I am. So I'm attempting to continue to serve in that way. Sacred Council might shift into something else in the future, but I happen to be here. And for me, I go a lot by this concept of Wu Wei, like the way of least resistance, and I happen to be here. And I happen to be in, a country where plant medicine is still very intact. I happen to also be in a country where there's not like a lot of disagreement around who can pray well, who can serve the medicine. There's like a lot of openness around if you can pray well, come. And there's also just a lot of freedom, and there's also just a lot of resource. So I happen to be here and have beautiful friends and family here, but I also have beautiful friends and family that are not in a country where the lineage is still intact, relatively. A lot of my friends are in countries where the lineages have been ripped up by people that have also been ripped up. So it's just like this kind of like ongoing process, also of just remembering that all of our ancestors, no matter where they're from, they all worked with the fire and they all worked with the drum and they all had songs and they all delivered babies and they all prayed for the dead. And so I'm so grateful for the Sapara people and the Comcock people and the all of the tribes that have welcomed me into their circles, the Tutu Hill people, and that are just seeing that we're trying to remember those of us that weren't born in a tribe, and they're showing us the way. It may not be their way. Doesn't mean you need to go live with the tribe. The most important thing, in my opinion, that we can do to help our brothers that are indigenous is food sovereignty, water sovereignty, sovereignty. And through the sovereignty, comfortability and resource so that everybody can just stay together. And then the mother tongue can continue to be passed down. And then their practices can continue to be passed down. And, the only healer in the village doesn't have to travel all year serving medicine. It's a lot. And so if we can find ways, I believe there's something called heal plant medicine. And it's this kind of idea around creating systems and structures for those of us that are more intellectual, like our Western brothers and sisters and friends, like those of us are like, let's create a system, creating a system that money can be donated to that actually has long-term support for our brothers and sisters. And right now, I know that, there's many tribes right now, and there's a woman named Sani who's part of the Sapara people in Ecuador, and there's just oil in their water in their river right now, and they are kind of organized with another movement called Naku, which is kind of like bringing people down to go hang out with them, to hang out with Manari and to hang out with the tribe and learn how to spearfish. And it's all based on like connection to nature. And I think it's so awesome, but it's kind of getting destroyed. And so we have so much need everywhere. So much need everywhere, including our brothers and sisters and friends and in North Carolina right now. And also, the flooding that happened in Puerto Escondido. And it's just kind of like, let's choose, where are we closest to? Like, where is our closest locus of control? And if it is a friend that's like organizing in North Carolina, send the resource there. And if it like is a friend that's like, messaging me on Instagram and being like, can we raise some money? Like, do that. We can't do everything, but we can focus on our home, our family, and then whatever is closest to us. Because I think we might lose our minds a little bit if we try to, evoke change on things that are a little far away, but still striving for that, global awareness, local action. Really. I don't even know why I started ranting on this, sister, but here I
I
am.
love that because you were answering my question before I asked it. That's why. I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because I was going to ask you a question along those lines of bridging the Indigenous wisdom in a good way and how do we actually support and interconnect these societies. So you intuitively just picked up
Perfect.
the vibes and, and laid down the wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I also have made a lot of mistakes when I'm living with certain groups of people too. And so I've learned with those from my mistakes, and like I'm just also trying to share that message too. And
Yeah.
sometimes it comes from like a really honest place. Like I was living with this tribe of people, and one of the sisters was a really talented maker of things. And I was like, we should totally start this Etsy shop called Ethos, and we're gonna have all these different makers from all over the world, and like let's start with this person. And so we bought a fair amount from this person because she had beautiful stuff. And that amount of, it wasn't a ton, but it was like a couple $100s. And so in American world, it's like, okay, but in this world, it was like a lot. And I thought it was going to be fine. And it threw the family dynamic completely off because the sister, I was recognizing the dynamics, like this sister wasn't as gifted as the other sisters, and like there was like kind of some stuff going on. And so for me to put power into one sister, me thinking I'm helping, right? It created this tension and the dynamic, and then she like wasn't allowed to sell at a later gathering because she had made enough money, and that hurt to see. And so just being really careful also, like, and we'll never really know too, so just giving self-compassion too. But that made me reflect. I'm like, okay, I need to be careful around this. I need to understand the dynamics a little bit more. I need to see who's interfacing with the visitors a little bit more, as opposed to like, I just had a really beautiful heart connection with this person. And my grandfather died, and she helped me kind of like cross him over and pray to cross him over. And I was just like, I really want to reciprocate, right? So that comes from such a beautiful, innocent space. And also looking back, I'm like, maybe I could have done that in a better way. And so just treading really lightly and just understanding, also understanding the history of the country and the tribe that we're in, and like how long they've been interfacing with the Western world. What has it been like with the money? Have they been receiving a lot of money lately? When is the most recent time they had a big influx of money? Because that also influences things. It's just really, it's really interesting. It's really, really, I could go on about that, but I don't know if I should. But it is something to think about and to explore. All of us together, all of us together too.
We have to be mindful and really respectful of where the Indigenous people are in relationship to the technological world and financial world that is kind of wreaking havoc over the rest of the world. So I feel there is that paternal aspect of we want to keep you safe and pristine and sheltered just so that you don't have to deal with the crap that we're dealing with in the Western or like, the other aspects of the world dealing with these more complicated technological aspects that are shutting us down. What do you feel like the line is or the role that we can play in a good way?
Well, we Westerners have had a lot of experience with money. Okay. And so there from that comes a little bit of training, like how to balance a checkbook, what you put your money into, how like when you get some money, you don't just spend it all right away in case of blah blah blah. So there's like certain techniques and skills that are necessary for managing that system. Same as if I were to go and be like, I want to serve ayahuasca. They'd be like, well, you need to learn the techniques and the systems of managing the energies. And so I see that as like why it is essential to look at these things and to support people in that. And then also, it's just like very site specific. This family in particular had a pretty abusive person that was like, had a little bit more power. And like, that's just like a family dynamic. And that is from all over the world. And so I kind of just stepped away from that family as a whole, but it did make me reflect on this idea of like, ooh, I should tread really lightly here. Because also, I did not speak the language well enough to be like, hey, I see that you're doing this thing. Can you explain to me why you're doing this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so then I was noticing, okay, so I opened up this kind of process and maybe I could step more deeply into it. But due to in my inability to communicate, I can't even ask any more questions. So it's actually best to just remove myself. And so I did. And I still kind of grieve that. Like I still haven't quite figured out. There's a lot of other things that were happening, but that is, and I was also aware that the person was seeing me like another person that had arrived before me who was very wealthy, like private helicopter wealthy. I was like, just more of like, a therapist that knows how to bring people together. And like this person wanted me to do a retreat for them. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let's see what we can do. And they're like, well, put down the money for the retreat. I'm like a psychotherapist. Like, it's like, a sliding scale. So there's also that awareness too, like how am I being seen? Yeah, it's an interesting thing too. And it's also like you and me raised in the Western world, here we are like in Spanish it's called plática. We're like, like chatting about how to support our Indigenous brothers and sisters. And at the same time, I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure. But this is what I'm thinking about. It's a really interesting conversation to keep having. And I know that there are some people that are much more credentialed to give an opinion on the topic. But I do know personally just being careful like how we dress when we go places and who we give the money to and how to give the money to.
Mm.
Like sometimes it's like don't touch it, or sometimes it's like really important to fold it up and put it a certain way, and just like also just like all of these customs. And that's why I think it's also really nice when we arrive in new places just to let ourselves just watch and see what how everybody else does things too, and just kind of just tread really lightly, just kind of like witness the space a little bit too. I think that's where a lot of the teachings for me come in too, when I get to hang out with even my family members from Greece, just seeing them move. Like these are my family members that are still in the land of their native mother tongue, and the way they move and the way they interact, it's like I'm witnessing that. And if I were to influence that space, I probably wouldn't remember as much about my lineages than just listening and seeing and watching. And it's yeah. And then I also think about this amazing person named Philomena, who's Kamkak, and she recently served Bufo medicine. And I was supporting her in ceremony, and a lot of our lovely people sent her home with a ton of money, like a lot of money. And I know that she never really wanted to be a medicine person, and she just feels the stress of like having to leave her kids, and her husband came to support her, which I thought was really cool. But I can also imagine too is like she's got this lump sum, and probably at this point she kind of knows how to make the decisions and do the things, but it's probably a lot of responsibility. And so it's like really, and just kind of like feeling for that. I don't know if there's a solution, but to just kind of hold it with compassion and be like, wow, that's really hard. And I know another teacher who's an amazing medicine man that had to leave. And yeah, there's just some cost when people travel um, to serve medicine. Just like my cost is that I'm not near my family and my friends. That is a cost that I'm consciously choosing, which is nice. I have the choice around it, kind of, I think. But I feel that, so all of us, we all have like there will always be a cost. And that is called the noble burden. And the more that we can just honor each other's noble burdens and just get real with that, I think that's a nice way of holding it. So
Integrating that share and the aspects of that. As you were talking, it was seeing these medicine men and women who are sharing their wisdom and beginning to train and teach. Like there is the discipline rooted in that. And I know for many lineages, when you step in to be the medicine woman or man, like this is the path you choose, and it is a path of sacrifice. Like you are committed to this, and you commit your life to that. So it's not taken lightly. And there's this aspect of that discipline and the knowledge, and then just seeing the flow of wisdom flowing from the Indigenous and like beginning to permeate those who don't have roots, like beginning to nourish the soils of like us, where I feel like I didn't grow up with tradition, besides Roman Catholic, like that did a lot of unconditioning around that aspect. But beyond that, I really had to search and find what I was craving and seeking within my soul. And it came actually to light with a different guest, where it really seeing it for me that these indigenous cultures that still light the fire, that still connect to the fire, that they become these pillars of light. And the people around the earth, the spirits, we see the light that they as a beacon, and we come to them for healing. We come to them to begin to light our fire again. And then we come back to our space and recognize, wait, there is more around us. And like here I have next to me my oak tree bundle, because I always felt like I receive my tools from as gifts. Like there very rarely have I ever purchased something that I use for for healing or, in circle. And there is one where I'm like, why am I waiting for a gift from like the Amazon or these spaces where I'm like, wait, I have these beautiful guardians right outside my door, these pillars and guardians of the oak that protect my home and that I connect with and make offerings to like all the time, and asking permission from the space to like, yeah, let me connect with the oak. Let me connect with these guardians on my land. Let me connect with the local flora and fauna and understand and begin to use these medicines that grow with me so that I can understand myself better. Because I still within me, it softened a lot throughout the years, but it was such a resistance to, I'm like, I need to get off Long Island. Like I grew up in Europe and coming back here to raise my daughter now 10 years ago with my family because I was close and having the support system. And all I wanted to do was just like get away. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to serve here. There's nobody here for me. And finally, a couple years ago, just accepting like, okay, I am here. This is where I am, and I'm here for a reason. And I'm here to serve the people that are here, and I'm here to connect to the lands that are here. And just allowing that space and the invitation for a life to find me here.
Yeah.
And that surrender, what we were talking about, the space to open up to life and allow her to guide us. So in that sense, yeah, sorry, the flow of the wisdom to begin to help our roots here that need that nutrients, that fertilizer, the compost, so that we can begin to deepen our roots and understanding, but then also the wisdom of the Western. Like it feels like, again, this is just me like riffing, like it'd be really cool for the medicine people who come and share. And then it's like, well, would you like like a business course? Like, would you like a little bit of financial understanding? Like, and having, now we have the way, the strict and dedicated and devoted path of the medicine man teaching us. And it's like, well, here's how we can support you. Of like, this is how you hold a spreadsheet. And I'm sure there are people out there doing that, but in the simplest sense of sharing those gifts, especially if our worlds are crossing like that, how do we
Totally.
really practically, support each other?
Totally. It's the same thing as like, first generation Italian versus first generation Scottish, and like teaching people how to balance a checkbook, different styles. So if we can empower someone that's like, we'll deal with the money in a way that feels more congruent, that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I hear you speaking about connecting with the land and northern United States, and yeah, to just be where were born. It was a really hard transition for me to be in Mexico, a very different land. And I didn't really know how to sing the song to the plants here until like maybe this last year, I was going for a run through the forest. I like to run and sing at the same time. I was like going for a
That's some
run,
good
and
training.
yeah, and I was
That's
asking the
support.
mushrooms for support. And I started to understand their song, and it was yeah, it's hard to be somewhere in some ways that I didn't grow up in nature. And I grew up in like a very rural area of New Hampshire. So my friends were the frogs and the trees and the grass and the bugs and grandmother spider and the spiders, and like I loved that. And to be here, I felt like a weird indoor plant that was like put, somewhere else where there's the seasons are hot and dry and wet. You can just start to feel a little bit of the seasons, but a lot of my practices when I started teaching yin yoga are Chinese medicine, which goes by the 5 seasons. And it's been really interesting to try to study Chinese medicine in Mexico. It is subtle, and that's okay. But yeah, for us to connect, and I think that's the one of the goals I mentioned of Sacred Counsel is to like, where's the medicine where you live? Work with that. Like, what is the nature of the medicine? Work with it. Like there's some beautiful allies up in that land that I absolutely love. Like I love working with reishi. I love working with ghost pipe. I love, finding a beautiful chicken of the wood and being able to forage my own medicine or chanterelles. Like wow, and growing up on the coast with like the beautiful cold seawater. It's really, really beautiful. And here I'm starting to learn the ways and connect with them here too. But has just to remember how to inhabit our world. more close to the world.
The energy of really listening, like that opening up to allowing ourselves to begin to, like we were talking about in the beginning, vibrating in a different frequency. And it's interesting that you said learning the language and being almost fluent in Spanish. And it's like, yeah, a part of us doesn't quite come through. I feel the same way in German. I speak it fluently. I learned it when I was a kid. But to like this much, I'm like, I'm fluent, but I'm not native. And there's this, it's like almost my mother tongue, but there's that part that I feel like gets like stuck in the wheel, and I'm like, like my humor doesn't translate
Right.
into German.
Right.
And it's something that I'm facing within myself in the past years because I started holding German circles with a dear friend, and we hold space online, and there's a beautiful community of women, and I practice myself in German, especially in the context of offering ceremonial cacao. Like there's different language that you have to use to describe, and I was really confronted again with the aspects of self that the stories that don't feel enough, or the part of me that isn't quite articulating the way that I want to, and then reassessing the relationship to what is language, what is expression, and allowing myself to slow down. And why can't I allow myself before circle to sit and begin to feel German, feel the influence of the poets and the artists beginning to move through me. And when I would do that, it would just flow. The channel would open up, and then I would find words that I didn't even realize that I did know. They were just stored there because I allowed myself to really begin to feel it and become that, and less from the mind, less from the place where the language is stored in the mind, but more from that spirit connection.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm gonna start reading more poetry in Spanish and just start to, because I think that's I what I value a lot about speaking in English is like I like to share metaphors, and so that makes me feel like people can feel me. But I have none of that. I do have a little bit of humor in Mexican Spanish. It's pretty easy to do humor in Mexican Spanish because it's a lot of play on words. It's mainly just like using words to play on each other. I don't know how else to describe it, but thank you for that recommendation. And also, I think it's we were talking about like not pushing ourselves too quickly on the spiritual path too. It's like just giving compassion to myself because like, okay, so I'm like expecting myself to show up a certain way. And I'm expecting myself to feel a certain way in a group of people because I've been used to doing that because I kind of had like this pretty nice binary cis lady, in America. It's like friendly, very easy. That is a feeling that I have become familiar with and used to. And so things are different. So what do I do with that? Do I beat myself up? Do I make more anxiety? Do I battle it more? Or do I just kind of let it be and let it grow? And I do notice that when I am letting it be and letting it grow and just kind of like letting myself, it's the words come out easier. But it's like when I'm fighting it or I'm trying to show up the way I do in these other places, of course it's not gonna feel good. It's totally different. Why am I trying to make something totally different be this thing?
Mm-hmm.
So that could be
It
for
is.
everything in life.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. For me, it's like that energy of curiosity. And it's like allowing myself when I can shift back into, oh, wait, can I just be curious about the situation and play with it? And what will I find? Because curiosity is that energy that lends to so much possibility. We open our minds to what is really here? What is really here? Yeah.
Love that you bring that up. I was just sharing with a client yesterday about that, about
Yeah.
like arriving to a space and like self-regulating, working with, people that are unfamiliar. Just like imagine bringing your child to and being like, what are you curious about? Like in a new playground, because there's like this energy of leaning into what's there. And so I love that you bring that up because I think it's absolutely true. So,
Yeah. And I heard some, I'm trying to remember where I heard it. I'd rather be interested than interesting. That's what it was.
mm,
Because people who are interested have that curiosity. They are leaning forward in life. They're asking questions rather than being the one that's like, oh, I'm so interesting. Like, I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. And they said the power of being interested is just a game changer.
yes. And I bet you it kind of elicits a way different brainwave state than
Yeah.
the other stuff. I don't actually know. I wish I did. I'm actually really curious about that. I'm curious about that.
Let me know if you find it out, if you
I
research it.
will. I will. I will. I have a good friend named Kate who I think her Instagram is Sahaji Somatics, and she has recently just gotten really obsessed with biofeedback and certain brainwave states and like cultivating those states through certain practices. And so she's kind of my go-to friend. So I'm going to ask her and I'll get back to you.
Well, I would love to know that. That sounds like super fascinating work and is something I think about a lot, especially in terms of meditation and practice, showing up to the same spot every day, like, and doing the same meditation in the same spot. And for me, I did that for a while just to like train it so that when I sit in this seat, bam, this is the state
Yes.
you're in. Like connection to that.
Yeah, those are like little neuro hacks that people can feel into. And it's like I'm talking about, building an altar. I share with people a lot, like feeding your altar, making offerings to it, sitting with it, recognizing it, giving a sense of gratitude to it in a kind of an animistic way. And so I say, when you're feeling like you need to be fed, you go and sit in front of your altar. But from a neurobiological perspective, like you said, you're cultivating the presence of the altar, the presence of the chair with the certain brainwave state. So when you're lacking that state, it may just actually be necessary to just sit there, and the presence of that history and relationship can bring us there. It's kind of like seeing an old friend that you haven't seen in a while, and it's like nothing has changed. It's that same energy. And so, very cool.
Well, talking about play on words, I love this because I came to it at one point sitting with my altar and realizing they're spelt differently, but I come with to my altar to alter my state. And the play on words of this altar here is to elevate me, to alter me into a new state of being. And the recognition, like that deep connection of the people who just see me, where it's like these old friends that you've cultivated the relationship with, but they see through all the stories, or they just see you, they see me. And it's like, oh wow, how refreshing that is to just like, all right, I could just be me because you remember who I am, and through your remembrance of me I can be me.
Yeah, just thinking of my friends that see me, and I'm sending them love right now. And if anyone's vibing with our conversation, the opportunity to just visualize that friend that you love and visualize them smiling, and may you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. And this is metta, it's loving kindness meditation, but this invitation to really feel that, or like that person that is so awesome, like wow, or the dog or that pet. I have a Sufi teacher, him Chum Baba, and he says, if I tell you I love you, who's feeling the love? Me. So we can cultivate a sense of wellness just by bringing to heart and mind that person, that animal that makes us like kind of smile a little bit and feel that. And that's felt in us, but it can also radiate out to them. Thank you for letting me bring in that little meditative prompt. It felt it felt right. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I want to thank you so much for your time and everything. And I am aware that we've been going deep into this conversation in linear time for a good amount of time. And I would love to just know if there is something that you would want people to know about cacao.
mm,
What would that be?
it's a good question. Just get to know yourself. And if cacao helps you, walk with that on your path. Yeah. We won't really know something till we know ourselves. So keep sitting with it, keep working with it, explore the relationship with it, explore when we lean on it too much, right? Or the times where we kind of forget about it, or then when there's the right relationship, or like any relationship, it's an exploration into self. We didn't even go there today around right relationship. Yeah, you're very welcome. And I thank you for taking the time, asking me questions, and being interested in what I have to share. That's always
Oh my
fun.
gosh, so interested. Yes.
Oh, it's been so
Well, now
sweet.
I'm curious about right relationship in a nutshell, or whatever comes up in that space around that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like anything. It's like, okay, so I have a dear friend named Amina, who's a Moondance abuela and also carries the medicine of ayahuasca. And she like was sharing something with one of our retreat groups, and she said she was sharing that the plants here, the teachers like ayahuasca, they're called plantas poderosas, which are power plants. And they give whoever takes them power. You could be a good person, bad person, quiet person, whatever. You'll just become more of what you are. And to understand right relationship for me, it's like, when do we feel like we need to have that thing to do what we have to do? The moment's like, oh, I have this thing. I need that so that I can do that. That's a different feeling than I would love to sit with this so that it can support me and I can support it. And that's been a little bit of, I feel like I've had that relationship with cacao. I've had that relationship with cacao. And also like just, honoring the honorable harvest. Like Robin Wall Kimmerer has probably popularized through her book Braiding Sweetgrass. It's like making an offering first. So she talks about her father. When they went camping, he would just be like, "Oh, gods of the mountains, like I offer my first sip of coffee to you," pouring it out, giving that first sip back to Mother Earth. I love doing that in ceremony too. If we have the opportunity to just recognize like this came from the earth, let's give her the first sip of that delicious thing, or just like putting it on the altar and giving it to the ancestors. But yeah, anytime when it feels like we can't do something without something else, whether it's meditation, right? Meditation or asking someone for approval or some substance, that's when it kind of it's time to like just slow down a little bit, see what's going on, see what part feels like we have to show up a certain way and why it's co-opting this thing, this practice, this person to try to exude that, and how to just see where we are. And so for me, that's right relationship, which is just like ever changing and flowing and just being really honest. And the only person that will know is ourselves. We can fool
Mm,
everybody else, but not ourselves. Rarely, maybe
yep.
sometimes the one closest to us, they might be like, I see you. You're like, no, it's fine.
Yes.
So, in humor. But yeah, that's right relationship in a nutshell for me. So,
I think that's a really important part to bring in, and especially working with plant medicines in that way. Of we can become so dependent
absolutely.
and, in a way, addicted to these allies. And I know for my journey as well, there was a time where it was every day, every meeting, cacao or
Mhm.
tea. And I remember the meeting and the day when I woke up. It was an early meeting, and I was drinking either a gayusa every morning when I woke up or a cacao. And I woke up and I'm like, all right, time to make your cacao. You're going on a meeting. And my body was like, no, I
Mhm.
don't, it doesn't feel right. And I'm like, all right, well, tea? Like, you want a chamomile? What do you want? Like, let's put something in the body. And my
Mhm.
body was like, no, you don't need anything. Nothing, please. Please do not feed me anything. And I was like, so I just show up with water? Like, that's what you want from me?
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, well, water, that's just a glass of water. And it felt so vulnerable. And I felt really naked showing up to that conversation and that meeting with just water. I was like, well, it's just me. There's no plant helping me. It's just me showing up. Of course, the water too, which is a powerful, beautiful
Mhm.
element that is a force of its own. But that moment, and then realizing, oh no, I have to break the addiction to thinking that I need something else to show up
Yep,
in this moment.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the same with like other like kind of harder addictions. It's like just curiously being like, what does it do for you? Like when my brother died, I was a professional athlete. I was playing soccer and I had knee surgery and I got addicted to opiates. And the university I happened to be going to was like a big investor in that pharmaceutical company. So I would just show up and they'd be like, here's more. So I was like
Wow.
kind of like, tempering the grief, still functioning at university and like taking all these opiates and a long journey after healing. But after the healing and into maybe, I don't know, this is like 15 years ago. So maybe 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I started to develop this curious, like, what did it do for me? And I felt like it was creating this like this kind of like warm swaddling of even though it feels like you're not living your truth, you're okay. So I was like, okay, so how do I cultivate that without that thing? Because that was a great thing that it did. It kind of like held me and swaddled me, and I developed a lot of compassion for what it was doing, because that's a very intelligent choice that I made in the time. Not the best for the liver. And then if you're a little bit more moral, maybe you feel differently, but I look at it pretty neutrally because I work with a lot of people that are negotiating addiction, whether it's work or identity or substance. Like, what's it doing? Okay, cool. So, can we explore other things that might help that so that we don't always have to go to that one thing? And then just kind of like broadening our allies in our system. Maybe it's breath. Maybe it's actually like taking a warm bath if I'm seeking that warm feeling. Maybe it's asking for a hug. At that current time, I didn't really have anyone to hug me, so I actually think it was the best thing I could actually do to make it through that time. But I felt the cost. And so, yeah, so just really honoring that. I love that you brought that up because it is, yeah, it's like, what did it do for you? And are you capable of doing it yourself? Let's see. Let's
Yeah.
explore.
Thank you for sharing that and with such honesty and grace. And I know I'm sure there's so many people that will be listening that can relate and recognize that, and just seeing those aspects of ourselves with, again, more curiosity, more self-compassion, more acceptance of where we are in our journey and the hard things that we go through in life. And another aspect, for me too, is like seeing what I gravitate towards and why. And there was this I was eating, I have a sweet tooth and I love eating sugar and like candies and sweets, until finally I was like, why do I need so much sugar in my life? Like, what is it that is it's giving to me? Because I'm very health conscientious. I know that this isn't good for me, but still I love it so much. And then recognizing on the deeper, like, spiritual level, I was using sugar as a way to add sweetness to my life because my
Mhm.
life didn't feel sweet. And so holding myself in enough honesty and love to just be like, okay, well, how can I begin to make my life sweeter without the
Mhm.
sugar?
Mhm. And then when you get to have that yummy thing, like really enjoy it. Instead of just like maintaining, right? Like let it be the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then noticing I didn't even need as much sugar when I started adding the things like that really nourished my soul, that were play and mana for my spirit. It's like, okay, then I don't need that. But it's like our actions are just constant communication with what we're actually working with when we begin to listen and decipher and decode our reality in a way that makes sense to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which makes me kind of just want to put a little plug on taking a pause from all things. Taking a pause from like a fallow year. Like when people work the land after a while, there's always a year. If in right relationship, taking a year break, taking a month off, taking a pause from cacao for a while, taking a pause from plant medicine. I'm going to a 10-day silent retreat in the end of the month where I'm going to take a pause from talking. And just and fasting, so amazing for folks that have a comfortable relationship with not eating, like and for those that maybe want to lean into kind of fixing that relationship too, because I know that brings up a lot or for some people, but giving the body a break on the digestion, getting into autophagy, that's something I didn't actually understand. For the last maybe 5 years I would fast 2 days in a row, but always on that second day, I would have a little cup of cacao and it would break the autophagy. So I wouldn't make it actually through the process of feeling really clear until this last fall. I did it all the way until like the third day. And then I had the cup of cacao. But the third day, I was like I could just, I feel like I was reading people's minds. I would think of someone, they would call, I'd feel really clear. My body was feeling really good. And this was like all based off of this amazing detox, functional medicine detox with a company called Equalife based out of Boston. Really beautiful stuff. Just wanting to take care of my liver seasonally. But as soon as I sipped that cacao, my body didn't really want it. But I was like, I haven't eaten for 3 days. I'm gonna have a little cacao. So I had another sip, but I immediately felt my consciousness shift. And so I was like, oh, okay, I feel that kind of down regulation now. And it's good to be in a body and it's good to feed yourself. And it's also good to explore what it's like to maybe fast a while too, with the support of someone else, because it's really hard if you're just trying it alone and also knowing what's going on with the body and kind of like tracking if the body's iron depleted, all that good stuff. But there's some really amazing research out there around like chance of cancer going in half if you do fast 3 days out of a year with water. Important to have water, and also low stress load, taking care of yourself. But it's just so interesting. Everything should have a little pause, always, including time with our loved ones, taking space every little bit.
I know. I guess fasting's another beautiful topic to go into that I explored a lot as a teenager, and the longest water fast I had done was 8 days,
Wow.
and I was like, zing! I was so clear. My cognitive function was like, I felt amazing. I had so much energy at the end of that fast. All during the fast, I sat there looking at cookbooks for days. But yeah, and the I did a lot of research on it. My mom and I were really into it when I was younger, and just the benefits of fasting. And I think the longest ones are 30-day water fasts. These were for people, dealing with life-threatening diseases and under supervision, making sure, and the very important part of breaking your fast, which is super, super important of how you break your fast. So I recommend, doing your research before you do any kind of fasting. Really, really good research. But the power of that to just allow no input, moving your body gently and allowing yourself to completely digest. You're constantly digesting the stuff that's inside, and now just giving the space for that healing and holding. And thank you for bringing that aspect into more tools for us to explore.
Yeah, fasting is a good one. It's a good practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, all you have to do is one thing and not eat. That's it.
Not eat.
It's funny how obsessed we
That's
become with this.
easier said than done.
It's funny, my last fast when I had those 3 days, I was thinking about breaking it on the second night, and so I prepared myself a meal, and I was like, I love cooking, and so I had so much fun cooking, and then I put it in the oven, and I was like, I'm satisfied. What I missed was actually cooking, like working with the herbs. So then I was like, I'll eat that in 2 days.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. That's really fun. So I have a few closing questions for you. One of which is, what is your favorite thing about being human these days?
Having a heart. Yeah. That is my favorite thing, a human heart.
What do you feel is the mission of Mama Cacao at this time?
I think it's to remind people that we're here to co-regulate with each other. Yeah, we're here to be medicine for each other. Yeah. She's a midwife. She's like helping us birth ourselves again back into just being a human.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And every answer is so different and it's so beautiful, and it always feels like, yes, yes, that is it.
Yeah.
A beautiful tradition that I'm really enjoying that I started on this podcast is the previous guest leaves a blessing for the guest today, and you get double blessed because our
Wow.
yeah, our past episode, they were a couple, Marlon and Paula, and they have this beautiful energy, and they each spoke a blessing for you. And I think I didn't realize it until we were sitting on the podcast today, because your business is Sacred Counsel and you work so closely with your partner. So I feel like it is the perfect weaving of having the masculine and feminine voice bless you and Sacred Counsel and your path. So I would love for you to just tune in and receive as I share this blessing and bestow it upon you.
Beautiful.
Alexa, in this circle, connecting with your energy. Being so grateful for the work you're doing, wherever you are, honoring your path, working with the tools that Mother Earth is giving to you. We feel very honored to share this world that you're part in. So blessing your work, your thoughts, your actions to make this place a better world. And from here, from Colombia, and then you, the good vibes of the birds, the river, the waterfall, the cacao plant, this abundant forest that surround us. And thank you for doing what you're doing.
Alexa, see these blessings open your heart, your mind, your body. Feel the beautiful strength, the abundance, waterfall, the river. Always resonate on this place. Mountains, the sun, the water. Always remember beautiful human being, being part of this beautiful human experience, bringing the joy, bringing the compassion, bringing the understanding, serving as a channel for the humankind to open to a new dimension. Always walking with strength, understanding that you're a daughter of this Mother Nature, daughter of this sun, the stars, the earth, and you have a very important mission. So connect always to your heart and resonate always with your heart. It will show you your path. Sending love from Akash. Big hug to you, Alex.
And that is from Marlon and Paula to you.
Thank you. I'd love to go visit them. Sounds very nice where they are.
It is amazing. They have a beautiful like permaculture. They bought an abandoned farm in Acacia, Colombia, and so they maintain and they teach permaculture and they have cacao, they have coffee, they have like lots of citrus trees, and I think because they also traveled to India, so they are bringing practices of yoga and beautiful like retreat energy into their space.
Feel it. I feel like it was directed right at me.
And if you feel called to and comfortable sharing a blessing for our next guest, that I will share with them.
What's their name?
You know what? I'm not sure who's up next. I would have to check.
Oh, I
You can either just tune into the energy and trust, or I will look it up quickly. Usually I know who the next guest is. It's not till next week, that's why.
I
Oh,
want.
yeah.
I don't need the name.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I do want to start this blessing with a quote from Jaya John. If your soul is on fire to serve in a way that scares you to death, and you don't feel worthy, ready, able, and the burning will not leave you alone, congratulations, you have your calling. So, my dear friend, thank you for taking the time and the space to listen to your heart song, to share your words with measured compassion and also your intelligence that you carry. Both are necessary. Let your head and your heart be best friends. Let them walk alongside you. May you continue to be well in body and spirit. May you feel glimpses of beauty and support, so when times are hard, you know that just beyond the ridge, the sun is rising. May you continue your path with light feet, kissing the earth. May you allow your eyes to see the truth clearly, right here, right now, In this moment, you are perfect. Allow your perfection to be shared as a gift, not only from you, but from the oneness to all that are. And so it is a whole.
Beautiful. I look forward to passing that blessing along.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your time, for your wisdom, for your insights, for your voice, for your poetry that moves through you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you so much for putting in the effort of doing all the background stuff so that you could share a space with others and love and care with this medicine. So I'm sending all the blessings and the yoga, they'd be like, Jai, victory. I'm so excited to see everything and to listen to everything. And I'm here as a friend and a sister if you need anything too. Or you ever want to come down to Mexico, you're welcome.
Thank you. And I will take you up on that offer. One day I will
Yeah,
be.
no, I'm serious.
So beautiful. So, just taking a few moments to close the space in a good way, allowing our conversation to integrate, allowing the wisdom that was stirred, the beautiful energies that live within us and around us to begin to connect with us in a deeper and deeper way. I love to close by bringing one hand to my heart, one hand to my belly or my womb space, feeling the connection of my hands on my body, my vessel, my temple. And from the space, connecting back down to the heart of the earth, connecting up towards the heart of the sky, once again feeling our spine elongating, our shoulders melting back. As we receive ourselves of children of the sky, the cosmos, and the earth, giving thanks to the energy of the earth, giving thanks to the energy of the sky, giving thanks to the energy of the waters, and giving thanks to the energy of the fires, giving thanks to the energy of the air, and giving thanks to the energy of ether, giving thanks to the energy of the void, and blessing from our heart space the energy of Mama Cacao, blessing our guardians, our protectors, our guides, our friends, all of the wisdom carriers on the earth, thanking the stars, the moon, the sun, the trees, the planets, the crystals, the animals, the plant allies, all humans, the insects, everything that ever was, everything that ever will be, and everything that is. And so it is. And it is done, it is done, it is done, and it is fun, it is fun, it is fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for beaming your essence into this conversation with Alexa and I. I hope that there was something in this conversation that really touched you, that expanded your horizons, that provided information, inspiration, and an activation to know yourself at a deeper level. So I hope all of this that is stirring within you now begins to integrate and plant within your heart, that your soul may awaken so that you can continue to nourish your roots, awaken your heart, and embody your magic, because you are pure magic. Until next time.